now we move on to the first invited presentation, invited talk, or rather, it's a conversation. It's going to be in the form of a conversation. The speaker, or we will be in conversation with Shri S. Sridharan sir. The topic of conversation is imparting dhyana insights based on teaching experiences in a living yoga tradition. Before we get into the conversation, introduction to Shri Sridharan sir. Shri Sridharan sir is at the outset is my guru in the field of yoga in the Krishnamacharya tradition. He has been my mentor in all my yogic practices. My humble pranams, sir. Shri Sridharan sir is the senior most teacher of the Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram. He is presently the senior yoga therapist, consultant and mentor at Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram. He had a successful career as a merchant banker in a public sector bank for 28 years. He became a student of Sri TKV Deshikachar, who is the son and student of Sri, the legendary Yogacharya, Sri Krishnamacharya. In the 1980s, Sri Sridharan sir became the student of TKV Deshikachar and learned the nuances of yoga in the Gurukula style directly for over 3 decades, during which time he was exposed to all important texts in yoga and application of yoga for illnesses and spirituality. He also learned Vedic chanting in the traditional style under his teacher. During this period, he had to divide his time between banking career and learning and teaching yoga under the tutelage of Sri Deshikachar. Drawn by the desire to fully devote his time to yoga, he gave up his position as a merchant banker and took to yoga on full-time basis in 1998. In 2002, he was directed to take the position of managing trustee of Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram, which was held by Deshikachar for 25 years from its inception. In this position, he had to lead the KYM as the administrative and the technical head. He held this position for about 8 years. This brought him to limelight in the world of yoga. He represented KYM in all the forums, conferences, seminars. His career as managing trustee includes the distinction of getting the various recognitions to the institution, and his teaching career includes consultations, classes for yoga therapy, classroom teaching of all aspects of yoga to Indian and international students. This experience is what we are going to draw from, means we are going to discuss on the teaching dimension of dhyana. So based on his very great vast experience of teaching dhyana to students, Indian and international, in the tradition of Sri Krishnamacharya. From 2010 to 2015, he served as a member of the governing council of MDNIY, Moraji Desai National Institute of Yoga, the apex body of yoga for the Ministry of Ayush, Government of India. So this gave him an opportunity to spread the teaching of the tradition of KYM. And he was also part of the Indian Yoga Association, and in so many consultative roles. And his role as a consultant, in the Yoga Certification Board set up by Ayush Ministry is very well known. And he chairs the subcommittees constituted to draft syllabus for yoga therapy certification. He was awarded the title Dronacharya by the Rotary Club of Madras East, and he has traveled widely and he has represented India in the World Yoga Festivals in China and UK. He has authored a book which gives the biographical sketch of Sri T. Krishnamacharya in Tamil. And his other interests include Carnatic music, which is Nada Yoga. He's happily married and has a son and a daughter and grandchildren. So namaste, sir. Thank you for taking your valuable time out and for being with us. Yes.
Thank you.
Now, I would like to, so in this conversation on imparting yoga, So I would like to have your initial comments before we start this conversation, sir, on this topic and the conference as such.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jayaraman. It was a very, a very long introduction. Anyway, thank you for giving this opportunity. Well, to start with, let me just tell you that, as you know, I have been teaching. I have been forced to teach by my teacher. That is how I came in. I never wanted to become a yoga teacher myself. I told him that I would like to learn for myself, but he said, you will learn by teaching. That's what he told me in 1982. So from then I have been teaching. Earlier stages, it was like what he says we will have to teach. We learn by that, by his guidance. And often there are two dimensions to this. One is my own inquiry about meditation and my own path, practice about that, coupled with the opportunity to teach that. So they go. In fact, they are parallel, but they meet each other. They meet each other. So another small idea about my experiences with meditation. My experiences with meditation. And basically, I have been inquiring into what this meditation is even before meeting my teacher in different ways: yoga, meditation, overall, reading books. Even I have had occasions to go to certain other, pathways, which include some modern meditation techniques like alpha mind control and a few others, including transcendental meditation, etc. The exposure made me in such a way that it made me to inquire further more. And I have been also initiated to the Gayatri meditation called Sandhya Vandanam, but I didn't know it's a meditation. So I was doing it because I was initiated into that. So earlier in my personal practices, my teacher gave me a lot of things about asana pranayama, and you can't ask the teacher to teach something you like and all that. That is not you have to wait and ask. So for a long time I was waiting, and one day I asked him, "Sir, you have not been teaching me dhyanam, meditation." He said, "Oh, that is so. Appa," he will say, that is Krishnamacharya, he will say Sandhya Vandanam is meditation. Then I said, I am doing Sandhya Vandanam. No, what you are doing is not meditation. So you have to come to me. And so I took some leave and went to him and took a lot of notes. And another senior most student of Krishnamacharya also was with me. Two of us were inclusive, separately received this. And then I started continuing the thing. So basically, what at this point of time I'd like to share is what I understood was there is something like a structure, and we in this tradition call this as form versus function. This and you have also a yoga teacher, and the form versus function. This form versus function in yoga is generally not only for asana. It is for all. In fact, I would say in the Ashtanga Yoga Marga, it is for all, including if you take ahimsa. A form is there. In ahimsa, a form is there. It is given. It function. It should give the function. Only when it gives the function is the form has worked. So in this case, so let us confine it to meditation. In meditation, what is the form and what is the function? So meditation has one important point is there is some karana, that is like we call it as mind, chitta, mind. This is basically the thing on which we are working, and it is very clear. Probably almost all the speakers would have talked about it, because I had occasion to hear two speakers. Now, what are we doing with this? And how do we do with that? That is the point. So it is over a period of time, some structure has been evolving, And if we call, because in Dhyana Malika, which is an exclusive text on Dhyanam by Sri Krishnamacharya, he says very clearly that he goes by the Vedic model. He is very clear about it. And even though he has not mentioned Sandhyavandanam there in Dhyana Malika, he talks about it in different ways. And he also talks about the Vedic model of meditation clearly. Now, so we are looking at something like 3,000, 5,000 years. From there, it has been evolving, like everything. And, it has been evolving. This Dhyanam has also been evolving. One of the reasons for probably the evolution is to the demand of the individuals on the basis. Now, before I proceed, I just want to have one more idea is this instrument of mind with which we are working, either my mind as a practitioner or the mind of the student who is taking from me a meditation class or whatever it is, because to call, Desikacharya used to say, he used to differentiate between meditative practice and meditation. He will say generally it is stated the mind is in a state of meditation, So how can you say I am doing meditation? So he said, let us keep it as meditative practice. Now, the meditative practice is the form. Finally, meditation is the function. It has to come, it has to go there. Now, when we are working with the mind, we think we should, all of us know, particularly in this group and all that, the mind that anyone acquires is not a mind they have acquired only in this. It comes over a period of time. And this is understood, agreed by everyone. So there are some bases. It's not like a computer that I am buying. It's a computer in which I am buying with files. So this, when I am going to work with that, when I am working for myself or for somebody else, this background must be known, understood. That is why in Krishnamacharya tradition, in anything, whether it is asana, pranayama, dhyana, or even any other aspects relating to yoga, chanting, we always choose one-on-one. We do it only one-on-one. And chanting, often you will be on a group. Children may be in a group, but otherwise it is one-on-one only. So dhyana is all the more on one-on-one only. Now, in one-on-one, it is very clear that we can take the person from a particular stage to a particular state. On this, it's a way, it's a method, and that is what we are learning over a period of time. So when I'm going to do myself, I get an experience which is to some extent explainable, not completely. So, but I'm trying to find out whether I'll pass on this to the person and get it now. So I think I should stop somewhere to pick up, because I had the occasion to teach you both asana, pranayama, dhyana, and you also been a part probably of a meditative, collective meditative thing on which you might have something to say. Yeah.
Sir, thank you. That gave me so many points. Means I had noted down a few questions to ask, and some of those were beautifully highlighted in your initial remarks. The first point was, of course, means so many insightful hints that you have already given. As means we are sitting on the treasure, and we don't know that we are sitting on a treasure. For example, Sandhya Vandana, those daily Vedic practices that we do. So how in the Sandhya Vandana, which we don't realize it as a dhyana model, and Sandhya Vandana as a dhyana model. So what differentiates these two?
Okay, great. You see, the starting point of this is the practice that he gave me. The moment he gave me the practice, he pointed out by the practice itself, by teaching, he pointed out the one major mistake. That's all. I wouldn't say mistake because it is a wrong word. The one observation. He said, this one, particularly this meditation, they have the potential, particularly the japa type of meditation, have the potential to make it mechanical. Actually, it's mechanical only, isn't it? Because we do japa, so we are doing it. But the way of mechanical thing is with an approach. So if it becomes very mechanical, then it becomes highly, I wouldn't like to have a particular word. It is non-yogic only. That's all we can say. See, when we do a recitation of a sloka, or when we do a recitation of a rit in mantra, so we can do it in a way that we are taken to that state of meditation. We are taken. Even a Vedic, because you are a very trained, you have been trained in Adhyanam, Veda Adhyanam. So my teacher, when he chants before me, and he has done, of course, learning is different. Guru Ucharana, Anu Ucharana. So on one occasion when I was ill, he chanted for me. And the same chanting, which I will be hearing in various rituals, which I will be hearing in various places, made a different impact on me at a very, very deep level. So when I am doing this ritualistic type of thing, I should try to find out the ritualistic aspect, that is the mechanical aspect of it, and remove it. So in the starting point itself, he started making a difference, like the Achamanam, and I think I should share with you that probably somebody should make a presentation on Achamanam as a model of meditation or something. The very Achamanam itself will be different, starting with how to look at it, how to keep the hand, pour the water, look, say the mantra, and then take it, wait. And there is a gap, and the gap is a silence. So this observing the silence in between the various activities, not making a continuity. As we are making the continuity, the mind starts going towards, but at the same time branches off. Like as I am driving my car or scooter, I continue to think of something else. The same thing happens here. That is broken. That's what he made me do.
So thank you, sir. So the same kind of that which we do in a mechanical way, when we become mindful, we understand the significance, the nuts and bolts behind that. It becomes really meditative. And it was very insightful when you said that normally we say sipping of the water. That's how we translate Achamanam into very unfortunate, very superficial kind of translation. But Achamanam itself has in your classes, I remember to have learned that it has connections, it has influences on the various nadis as such that end in the various parts of the hand in which the water which we pour with the mantra. So such a means even very very neglected or kind of very from unexpected quarters in the Vedic practices. It's not only that japa or pranayama or chanting which has those meditative values, even the very starting point, that is Achamanam, has great things. And now one more point that you mentioned in the course of your initial remarks is the practice of yoga in groups and also individually. So now in the current era, especially when in the pandemic situation, so of course dhyana means ekas tapaha dviradhyayi. That's how in Shastra we have. In tapas or during dhyana, it is singular, means it's a singular pursuit, it's a singular voyage. And for adhyayana and study and other purposes, 2 or more people. But we see that there is a trend, and it's a very beneficial trend that we see, that guided meditation, where so many participants are there, and they get as a collective practice guided by one guru. So their kind of mind is elevated. So what are your observations? Because especially I have participated in the Kalyana Vahi program during the pandemic situation, which was a solace to so many people. So your thoughts on the guided group meditation practice and how to translate that slowly into an individual sadhana.
Thank you. Thank you. I need to give a small background about this. As you initiated, you started the discussion. We don't teach in group at all. In fact, it is something like a taboo for anything, as you know it, particularly not 1 or 2 years, 10 years you have been with us. So when the pandemic in February 2019, I think the first pandemic came and there was a complete lockdown. Some of our teachers and people in KYM they called and said, something has to be done. We are all highly depressed. And they wanted me to do something, being the senior, probably senior most. And a lot of them who asked for it had a particular relationship in the sense with me, in the sense they liked or whatever it is. And it was also others followed it up. First, initially, I told them, what do I do? You want me to talk on Yoga Sutra or something? They said, no, nobody can go anywhere out, They said, we will zoom in, that's all. Even if you sit there at 4 o'clock in the evening, we don't mind that. Just sit or do something. And, go on chanting there. I don't know. I was doubtful as to what I should do. And okay, then I said, why not we do some meditation? Let me think about it. And as you know, in the KYM tradition, because we are talking about meditation techniques under various traditions, particularly, all that we have learned from our teacher Desikacharya is a model protocol like it is there, but highly flexible. Highly flexible. It is a protocol with a highly flexible aspect. There are some inbuilt things there. There are some inbuilt things. So there will be something like a nyasam, something like avahanam, depending on how to give it to the individual, even the background of the individual, their their faith system and all will be taken into account. So there are some basic structural model that he has been developed by Desikacharya based on his teacher's teaching, which I have presented in elsewhere in forums like various other forums. Now, I just thought that, okay, I said, I will give you the instructions. In fact, I didn't know, as you said, that this is guided meditation. I didn't know about it. I said, you will all be sitting. I will give you the instructions. The only thing that I am going to ask you to do is just follow the instructions, not even the video, only the audio. At that point of time, what came to my mind is, based on my experience of meditation, I need to tell you this. See, what are we doing in meditation? That's a question. What are we doing in meditation? We are trying to say, probably because, see, when we talk of theory or sutras and all, they are different. But let us be very clearly, in a very loose, ordinary way, we will ask, what are we trying to do? We are trying to focus on something, isn't it? But why are we focusing? Because, yes, we want one thing to be in the mind and nothing else. Because that's confusion. If it's only one thing in the mind, good, bad, indifferent, it is good. So only one thing in the mind, and we want to make it like a practice to start with, so that it becomes ultimately a feature in our mind. So to be concentrated on one thing, it can be anything. It can be a visual, it can be an audio, it can be anything. So we are trying to probably say, by doing that, we are trying to do something with the mind to go there. That's very clear when you do that. But the most important thing that I found was, rather than going there, a lot of distractions that come in. That is the most important point. As I told you, by the time that I have been giving in 2019 this, I have already come, so many years I have passed through in practice as well as in individual meditation. So what are we trying to do? We are trying to ward off disturbances of the mind. And the disturbances are two types. One is something relating to this activity of meditation, and something completely indifferent, not required. And there also, in the completely non-related thing, one is rubbish. It cannot mean anything. Second is important. I have some work. I have something to do. The mind says, where have you kept your key? What is the next appointment? They are not rubbish, but there are some rubbish. So all this, but wherever it is rubbish, whether it is important, the distractions are the most important. How to keep off the distraction. When you are not able to keep off the distractions, however much you try to ride the vehicle on the road, the road is full of traffic. Then you will have a difficulty. Make the traffic to go away so that your driving is becoming faster and straight. Now, the question is how to make this distractions to go. One thing that I thought was an audio will be good. So I told them very clearly, as you are a participant, you know that. I also want you to say a few words about that. So I said, I'll give clear instructions. And what you are going to do is you know already. It is not something new. I am not going to teach you something new at all. Raise your arms, lower your arms. Inhale, recite a mantra. These are all the things. So when I am giving the instruction, whenever the mind thought comes, any thought, it can be even relating to this, whether am I inhaling through left nostril, right nostril, keep off the thought. So you try to make it in such a way that you just follow the instructions. When there are no instructions, try to make yourself calm and try to make yourself clean so that the mind does not work. Wait for the next. So this 1 week it worked. After that, I said close. That's all. Then people said, no, we find some solace or something. I don't want the solace to be something like a sleepy one, So we inquired about it. So I was surprised that it went for 70 sessions and all that, and you were a part of it. So the question was, when devising this, I found that I have been instructed by my teacher to do it differently with one of the very senior students to whom I was to go every day to give instructions. The person can do that. And I was doubtful why he is asking me to give instructions every day. So this is how I find the guided meditation. I find properly done in a particular way is a method by which we are introducing to the student the ability to keep off all the distracted thoughts that has to seep in. Now, whenever I am doing my Sandhya Vandana and I keep my hand here, I tell myself I am not getting disturbed. So my particular practice of pranayama and all also will help.
Sir, continuing with that, just one clarification. How to transition from the guided meditation to my own sadhana?
Yeah, that's very important. See, I have found after this, feedbacks have been coming and all that, and I need to share some points with you. Either I would have shared, or if it is not, it may be new. You see, one more point about this mind as an instrument is, for example, what happens to our, actually Krishnamacharya says, and our teacher used to say, mind is like a vessel in which we cook. As we cook every day, we have to clean, So what happens is, if the continued, actually what I'm doing, in fact, to start with, even the guided meditation, how far it will work for individual will be completely different. If I have 40 people, it will be 40 will be different. For some, they may even get the clue in 2-3 classes, and they will be able to get into that immediately, which I have seen in other cases also. But for some, it takes a longer time. It is not a disqualification, it is a feature or phenomena. That's all. Okay. It's not a disqualification at all. It doesn't mean that this person is this, that, that's all. Second is, as we grow more and more into the life transactions and all that, if we are going to go through more tense, terse transactions every day, we may need this guided meditation for a slightly more longer period so that they come back. And in some cases, based on the feedback, not exactly on the meditation, but based on overall feedback, I now ask some of the students to go back. And I gave it to one person from Delhi, a professor, a psychology professor. I gave another 10 sessions I wanted to give. The person has attended, but has been doing over a period of time. And again, he should not get into the mechanical aspect. So maybe we will have to revisit. And so sometimes maybe that is why probably in ancient days, the Guru-Shishya relationship continued, like they call it as Ante was in, maybe they're not necessarily that they have to do the technique. But maybe the teacher will ask one day, maybe why don't you go and sit down in the presence of the teacher, for some time, or why don't you ask the teacher to give one more session like that.
So thank you very much for those enlightening points, how to transition into an individual sadhana. One last question, which in a way will sum up the discussion on imparting experiences and imparting dhyana. So there are so many traditions of yoga, so many traditions of exclusively, again, there are certain traditions which focus exclusively only on dhyana, and certain other traditions, we have all the other limbs of yoga being incorporated into as a holistic kind of practice. Now, so there is a varied, such diverse traditions of practice, teachers of dhyana. There are individual dhyana practices or sessions, and these guided dhyana practices and sessions. So what will be your advice, being a veteran, having taught for so many decades? What will be a few general guidelines that you would want to give to the teachers of dhyana, which can be applicable universally?
Right. First class question. See, this is a very, very important and good question. Basically, what I have understood in this 40 years of my experience is, and which our teacher has told me very clearly, in our tradition, in this tradition, we call it as KOM tradition now, that is Krishnamacharya, Desikacharya tradition. We don't teach dhyana in the beginning at all. No. Whether even if the person comes and says, I want to do spiritual, sir, some people very rarely, because we find a lot of people coming for therapy. Actually, in therapy, we are some sort of meditation we will be teaching that they may not know. You see, basically, one more thing that one must know is, meditation does not mean that you have to sit down and do a japa or anything. Our teacher Desikacharya has told a number of times and has also demonstrated, and I have also personally felt that the moment you start doing asana practice with a built-in, breath into that, like your breath starts, movement starts, and all that, and where you build in, if possible, a mantra, like if you do Surya Namaskara and proper breathing and with the mantra of Surya mantra, there is meditation there already. And so, only thing is, we should be very careful about the faith of the individual. In fact, I had occasions to people who do not have faith in God, do not have anything, they have been taught meditation. So, what one should do is, they should not jump into teaching meditation immediately, even if the person asks. Sometimes, the doctor will write to us saying, please teach meditation only. We said, oh, we will do that. I think the first criteria that I would say that one should know is, the person must be able to do some reasonable breathing. That is very important. In fact, if you can see, even the best of traditional classical dhyana techniques, breathing is always there. There is no japa that directly goes in. There is always pranayama, samantraka is there. If you go amantraka also, so the first thing is, you first give the person when you do want to do breathing, you need your structure to be proper. So naturally take the person to some extent, tell them that we are going to go into it. And if they are very, very adamant about it, we ask the person to sit down towards the end and, not immediately recite, just sit quietly. That's what sometimes we will say. So my points before I end is that it is the teacher's important aspect, because if the person is not ready and you start teaching something, it will have a negative effect. The person may not even go anywhere near dhyana, and he will say, I will not go near dhyana. So we have to be very, very careful in doing that. Thank you.
Sir, thank you very much. They say, means we might have heard about a particular saying where the bigger or the nature of the vessel that you have, that defines how much water you can collect from the ocean or the river or the source of water. So I'm not sure the vessel in the form of my questions, how big they were or how useful they were or how leaky that vessel was, I don't know. But still I tried within my own limited capability to place certain questions to draw from your immense experience in so many decades of teaching yoga, dhyana especially. So really immensely grateful for your time and participation and your insights, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Jayaraman. Thank you so much for this.
This was a classical example of, means when we see of this conference is all about Hindu traditions and techniques. So these are insights, valuable insights from a living tradition. Textual sources are there, and how living tradition sees things very pragmatically, practically, and takes it to each and every individual. So that was exemplified by these inputs, sir. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Dr. Jayaraman.